Let's look today at another ballpoint pen with a rather surprising cult following. Hello everyone. Recently on this channel you may have seen a review of the Fisher Space Pen, in this case the Cap-O-Matic Click ballpoint pen. This is in the Space Shuttle edition. And no word whether current Space Force cadets, are they called cadets? I actually don't know. Whether they are issued a space pen at space boot camp. But the Fisher Space Pen Company is a civilian affair. The pressurized right and zero gravity space pen was designed by a civilian, and at least he was a civilian at the time of the invention. He may have been a veteran, I have no idea. Not important to the story, but in the company that he founded and that still makes the Fisher Space Pen is a private company. Although they have been sent into space on every manned mission, I believe, since the 60s. But this is not the most popular government issue pen in existence in the US. That title belongs to this, the Skilcraft US Government retractable ballpoint pen. And there's probably a military procurement code model number for this that I do not know. Perhaps one of you veterans or federal employees could tell me. It's not just a military pen, although I believe the U.S. Navy issues these, or did in the past. But for other government employees and government agencies, these are a widely known, widely used pen. These are still manufactured largely unchanged since the 1960s, like the Fisher Space Pen. But this is created by the National Industries for the Blind, and I believe they're made in North Carolina. At least they were. I assume that is still the case. National Industries for the Blind. Apparently, in the 30s, leading up to World War II, Roosevelt signed a law or a regulation that the U.S. government should attempt to purchase products from industries, companies that employed blind workers. And so the Skilcraft branding was created. And they make a number of things, mops and other kind of cleaning products, as well as office supplies and some other things. But the one that seems to have the cult following is this ballpoint pen. And as I said, largely unchanged. You can buy them new by the dozen now. Check Amazon or buy it directly from, I believe, the NIB has their own site from which you can order these pens. But they have a surprising cult following. They are surprisingly popular among veterans, among federal employees or retired federal employees. There are tales of them smuggling out pockets full of these pens to use in civilian life or retired life. So I was curious, why the cult following? And there's a lot of kind of urban legendy. It has its own wiki, basically, legends about the Skilcraft retractable ballpoint pen, saying such things as on a naval chart or map, its length is exactly 150 nautical miles. Don't know why, though, in the modern Navy that would be important, but probably apocryphal and maybe completely made up, but interesting anyway. Also, supposedly has been used maybe by MASH units in the field for emergency tracheostomies. Actually, I remember a episode of MASH in which a ballpoint pen was used for that purpose. Hawkeye, maybe. A Korean civilian caught in the crossfire was saved by Hawkeye with a ballpoint pen to the throat. Also probably apocryphal, but fascinating story anyway. There are other stories you can read about online about the miraculous powers of these Skilcraft ballpoint pen. It's a very unassuming looking pen, and that's part of what makes it appeal to me. The look of it is not too dissimilar from the Space Pen, which itself is not that dissimilar from the Parker Jotter. And I think that's why I like all of these quite a bit. It's all plastic in terms of the body, a metal waistband there, the ring in the middle. This is a very used version I have here, as you can see. But let's look on the inside and see what's part of what makes this so special. That's going to roll away probably on this desk. Oh well, I'll find the parts later if need be. The insert, I think this used to be way more common than it is now. I seem to recall taking apart cheap advertising retractable ballpoints back in the day when I was a youth that had a brass refill. That's not your standard hollow plastic, clear plastic tube like you see in a Bic, for instance. Brass. The literature says that the contract for making these pens for the US government stipulated that they had to be able to write for a mile. Don't know how you test that. And operate at temperatures from -40 up to 160 degrees. So any temperature at which a human being can survive, this pen is supposed to be able to write at that temperature. So kind of similar to the Space Pen in that regard. This also has a brass, but it's a pressurized cartridge. The Skilcraft isn't expected to be able to write in zero gravity or upside down, while the Space Pen can do those things, but similar temperature range, built to take abuse, extremes in weather, etc. But it looks just like a simple government issue pen. If you think of something government issue, this is kind of what you think of. Simple, nothing flashy about it, just simply does its job. Although maybe that's not what comes to mind when you think of government, but I digress. Do you have any experience with the Skilcraft US Government pen? If so, I'd like to hear your thoughts on it. Skilcraft USA on the clip. There's a logo there, maybe you can see. It almost looks like the hurricane symbol, but it's an S for Skilcraft, presumably. Metal pusher at the top. Very satisfying click. I'm going to have to lift this up to the microphone so you can get a good sense of that click sound. It's a sound that brings me back to my youth when all the advertising pens used to be pretty much like this. I mean, this is the style. This is what they looked like. This was the standard retractable pen styling when I was a youth. And maybe a lot of those were also made by the NIB. I'm not sure. Very simple. You can still buy the brass refill cartridges in black or blue. I prefer blue, so I'll keep my eyes peeled for one of those. You can still buy them. So if you have a pen like this one, has clearly seen years of service in some government office, smuggled out by a retiree or someone moving to the private sector, Maybe a naval seaman on shore leave left it behind. Probably has a story to tell. Probably has not been used for an emergency tracheostomy, but maybe has measured out some nautical miles on the chart. We have to try this thing out before we go. Okay, so let's try the Skilcraft US Government Colt retractable ballpoint pen. Let's compare it with the also largely unchanged over the decades Bic Crystal in black. Presumably this is a medium point. Let me unlock the, sorry, I'm jostling the camera so much today. Apologies. Trying to get close to the action and I got a little too close to the action. See, I don't think the cartridge has any writing on it. In feel, it feels like a medium point. About the same as the Bic. See if there's any way to tell by looking. It may be a smaller point, a finer point than the Bic. The shape of the tip is different, that's for sure. But how does the ink compare? I would have a hard time distinguishing that black ink, and the feel of it was very similar. That's high praise for me. Because I like the Bic crystal so much. I see why it has a cult following. That's a pen I could stick in my pocket and carry around every day. I don't use ink pens. I sound like a old church lady. Get my ink pen out of my pocketbook. Don't use ink pens very often, except when I'm writing a check or I have to sign something. You know, I have enough Bic crystals to last me more than my lifetime. But in terms of carrying around every day, right now I carry around a space pen in my pocket as an everyday carry. And I've shown that in previous videos. Not this space pen, but a bullet space pen that fits in your pocket. When I'm wearing a shirt with a pocket in the front, I think this is going to be my go-to everyday carry. In case I have to do an emergency tracheostomy, in case I have to measure out the distance between my ship and an island, or do any of the other miracles attributed to this magical government-issued pen. I like it. It's a great writer. It's not showy. It just does its job. It's another one that I would say is a Toyota Corolla of ink pens. Thanks for watching this review. If you have a working knowledge of the Skilcraft pen, or they make pencils as well, and I have a few of those that will probably make an appearance soon on this channel. Tell me about it in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you here again next time.